In a year filled with incredible, record-breaking UFC fights, there were a few that we definitely won't be forgetting anytime soon. There were too many to list down together, and we could definitely have a second list with all the fights left over. But for now, a rundown of 7 of the many chilling fights of the year to make sure you keep watching this video. Let's begin. At number 7, Nate Landwehr wins a majority decision over David Onama in a wild instant classic. Following the conclusion of the UFC Fight Night, the promotion awarded 2 Performance of the Night bonuses and 1 Fight of the Night award, and this showdown earned the Fight of the Night prize. Even though Nate Landwehr won by a majority decision, both he and David Onama deserved a standing ovation for their skills in the co-main event. With a reach advantage, Onama was able to keep Landwehr at the end of his blows early on, while establishing a slick lead jab. When Landwehr was able to bridge the gap, Onama began opening up with 2 and 3 punch combinations, putting power behind each attack. Landwehr already had a cut under his left eye by the midst of the first round. Onama then nearly finished the bout with a massive punch that knocked Landwehr to the ground, and it seemed he was done. Despite appearing unconscious for a fraction of a second, Landwehr awoke and hung on until he could get back to his feet as the featherweights continued to trade shots. Landwehr's late elbow clubbed Onama, changing the tide of the fight. Landwehr's onslaught in the second and most of the third round was enough to secure the victory in dramatic fashion. Next, at number 6, we have Dustin Poirier defeating Michael Chandler via third-round submission. It was a back-and-forth bout with dramatic momentum swings, but when the dust settled, Dustin the Diamond Poirier had defeated Michael Iron Chandler via rear-naked choke submission at UFC 281 from Madison Square Garden on Saturday night. Poirier is now the 6th fighter in UFC history to win at least 21 fights, tying for 5th all-time with Charles Oliveira. Chandler and Poirier made it clear in the first round that they weren't only going for fight of the night, they were thinking about fight of the year. Chandler had an early lead in the opening round. He landed a number of devastating overhand rights that put Poirier on the defensive early on. The Diamond found his own success by smashing a bloodied Chandler into the fence at the end of the round. Poirier, on the other hand, was unable to capitalize on the momentum. Chandler took the fight to the ground in the second round, where he dominated for the majority of the 5 minutes. He tried to lock in a rear naked choke, but was unsuccessful. In the third round, though, it was the Diamond who had the advantage. The two continued to put on a display, but Poirier finished what Chandler couldn't in the second round in the third. Now at number 5, Simpsonville's Stephen Wonderboy Thomas wins against Kevin Holland. The main event of Thompson vs. Holland in the welterweight was a battle of karate and kung fu black belts. With both men looking for a takedown, would Thompson's classical karate be able to counter Holland's dynamic assault? Both men had taken a terrifying amount of damage, and it was only a matter of time before one of them fell to their opponent's assault. Simpsonville MMA athlete Stephen Thompson, also known as Wonderboy, defeated Kevin Holland via technical knockout after 4 rounds in the Ultimate Fighting Championship in Orlando. It was a fight that ESPN dubbed one of the year's best fights. The battle took place at Amway Center, an indoor arena in downtown Orlando, and both competitors were awarded $50,000 for the fight of the night. Thompson received 8 of these bonuses during his time in the UFC, now a welterweight, and ranks 6th among the top MMA welterweights. As the fight began, Holland dropped Thompson early, only to be met with a shin to the jaw in response. Early on, the two fighters kept pace, but Thompson eventually drew ahead as Holland battled to keep up with Thompson's hand speed and kicks. Holland's body wavered as Thompson uncorked a constant flood of damage. Blood splattered across their bruised craniums. Holland's corner finally had enough and threw in the towel, giving Thompson his first victory in 2 years and delivering fight fans one of the most exciting main events of 2022. Moving on to number 4, Mateusz Gamrot defeats Arman Tsarukyan by decision. Mateusz Gamrot and Arman Tsarukyan had to battle it out on the scorecards, and only one fighter walked away with any sense of accomplishment. Gamrot and Tsarukyan are without a doubt 2 of the best fighters on the planet, and now we're ready to relive a 25-minute masterpiece that ended a UFC fight night. From the first round, Tsarukyan continued Gamrot's attempts to impose his will with searing blows before throwing him on the canvas. The 2 men whirled around, entwined in an endless tangle of turmoil. Tsarukyan continued to kick his Polish opponent when the fighter remained standing. While Gamrot believed changing stances would make the agony go away, nothing helped. The Armenian simply punished him with more devastating kicks. Gamrot displayed remarkable boxing as he continued to hunt forward until he finally secured the takedown. Even with his confidence skyrocketing, Gamrot struggled to keep his younger opponent under control as Tsarukyan landed a spinning back kick straight between his ribs. With time running down in their battle, the two lightweights circled, each aiming for the clinching blow as they swung mallets at one another. Takedowns met spinning back fists, Leg kicks met boxing combinations. Submission attempts received scrambles. It was both insane and wonderful. While the Polish superstar won the match, it was both guys who won the hearts of millions. Up next at number 3, Davison Figueiredo regains flyweight title from Brandon Moreno. It's rare that the third showdown between two champions lives up to the expectations of their previous two clashes, but that's exactly what happened at UFC 270 when Moreno and Figueiredo squared off inside the Honda Center, and it left fans itching for another clash between them. The two flyweights fought to a draw in their first fight, but Moreno won the UFC flyweight title with a stunning submission win in their second fight, and then they came back for their third. Before the first bell even rang, the energy in the arena was electric. Moreno, a crowd favorite, looked like he was geared for battle. Figueiredo hoped to get an early advantage over his Mexican competitor by establishing his low kicks. Moreno waded forward, arms down, and picked his shots from a distance, oozing confidence. But as the fight went on, both men began to crank up the pace, with Figueiredo throwing Moreno backward to start round 3. Returning to the ring, Moreno hammered the Brazilian with a flurry of strikes, much to the pleasure of the Hispanic fans. With a smile, Figueiredo silenced the crowd by hitting Moreno in between the eyes with a fastball. Moreno unleashed everything from his chamber as the battle went into the championship rounds, and with one round remaining, the two men hammered the soul out of each other in the hopes of crushing the other's title aspirations. In the end, Figueiredo's damage won him the fight and the 125-pound championship. Following up at number 2, Khamzat Chimaev wins in an all-out war versus Gilbert Burns. Khamzat Chimaev last fought in April at UFC 273 against Gilbert Burns, a former championship challenger and one of the greatest contenders today. So it's not a shock that when these two welterweights clashed, they produced a spectacular fight that will be remembered for a long time. The two went out in a full-blown brawl that lasted the entire 3 rounds. The fight earned the Fight of the Night award and was largely seen as one of the greatest fights of the year. Chimaev, with a sinister sneer on his face, looked to end Burns early, and for a brief moment, it looked like we were about to witness a public mauling. But Burns had other plans. As he squared up to Chimaev and punched him in the face, Burns was like the little underdog watching the blood streaming from his unbeatable opponent and establishing that, yes, the Swede is human. Chimaev continued to find a home with his lightning-quick jabs, while Burns fired haymaker after haymaker into Chimaev's temple before going down with body blows as the crowd erupted around them. Both fighters were showered with praise after their dramatic April battle, which concluded in a unanimous decision win for Chimaev, and Burns has pushed for a rematch. Chimaev rose to number 3 in the MMA fighting global rankings at welterweight and was set to face Nate Diaz in the main event of UFC 279. Finally, here's why Glover Teixeira versus Jiri Prochazka is the 2022 MMA Fight of the Year for Sporting News. Nobody could have expected the all-out battle between a 29-year-old samurai-inspired warrior and a 42-year-old veteran inside the octagon in June. Jiri Prochazka competed for Glover Teixeira's UFC light heavyweight title at UFC 275. Prochazka, a fierce assassin, had a 12-fight victory streak and was 2-0 in the UFC. Teixeira eventually reached the top in 2021 after failing to win the UFC light heavyweight title in 2014. Nobody anticipated Teixeira, the plus 162 underdog, to go head-to-head with Prochazka, the minus 188 favorite. Someone Teixeira's age should not have been able to keep up with Prochazka's pace, but the Brazilian did. In the end, Prochazka defied the odds and defeated Teixeira to win the title. They fought through craziness and chaos from the first round, sweat pouring and blood splattering with every strike. Teixeira's granite jaw stood up as he plowed through hellacious barrages of strikes, while Prochazka met everything thrown at him with a wicked smirk and a red streak trickling into his eye, both men pushing their bodies to the very limit. As the rounds advanced, both men's blazing attacks came down like balls of claymores fired from a cannon. They were clearly fatigued, but they raced towards the UFC championship. When Prochazka had had enough, he turned his fist into a driver and went after Teixeira's head like a punching bag. When Prochazka took up the Brazilian's neck, squeezed with the force of the old gods, and coerced the tap, the crowd erupted. It was the conclusion of 4.5 rounds of total chaos. We had a new champion and a new contender for the most epic title battle in UFC history. That's all for this video. Let us know in the comments which one of the fights this year was your favorite. Make sure to also give this video a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel for more videos like this. See you at the next one.